and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Jenna, can we have roll call, please?
Trustee Rhodey?
Yes.
Trustee Belt?
Yes.
Trustee Krasovich?
Here.
Trustee Kreiser? Trustee Grabowski? President Knutson?
Here. Okay, old business. We're going to go right into the review, discussion, and possible action on the strategic plan spreadsheet and prioritization of goals and tasks. Tonight, we're going to be looking at putting people on boards or different parts of this, and also possibly, as you know, we had two members on the board that pretty much headed this up. If there's anybody that would like to be on that type of group again, we'll consider that, but right now it's more getting things going. And I will look to Matt for this.
Thank you, Mr. President. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for their extra time tonight. I know everybody's busy, and coming in an extra hour early is a challenge sometimes. But this should be one of the fun activities of being on a board and being part of village staff. It should be fun and exciting to think about big picture items that we're going to work on and hopefully checking off a list over the next 12 to 18 months. So it's exciting. I want this process to feel legitimate to everybody, to make them feel like, to make sure everybody has an opportunity for a full voice in what we're going to talk about tonight. But at the same time, I don't want to add time and effort where it's not necessary. So if we reach quick conclusions on things, that's okay too. To that end, I've created a very, very brief, very stark little presentation just to lend structure to our discussion tonight. So what I hope for us to make progress on is to establish priority of what tasks we're going to work on over the next year. There were 16 objectives that were identified in the strategic plan when the board adopted it this past summer. Historically, there's been board members that have been assigned or volunteered to share in ownership of the individual objectives and goals. So we want to make progress on that. And then as we work on this, we want to establish some sort of expectations of when we give feedback to the board as a whole. And then at the end, hopefully, whether this is the spreadsheet tracking the progress of the plan or whether it's a separate document, I hope to have something in a future meeting that'll reflect the discussions that we've had here tonight. Okay? So if we get started on the priority piece of it, obviously not everything can be top priority. As I said, there were 16 objectives that the board identified previously. And what I've said before is, if you try to work on all 16, it means you really don't accomplish any of them, right? They all move at like a snail's pace if you don't focus. And you know, from staff perspective, that means that the board has to understand that there'll be progress on some, but not progress on the others, right? And so in getting started with this discussion, I'm going to kind of throw it out to board members in terms of how deeply you want to review the 16 objectives that were already identified. We could go through them one by one, just to remind everybody of what they are. In my memo prepared for this, I did recommend, I think, 4 to kind of start with. I could just review them quickly to start off the discussion. Does anybody have a preference?
Sure, are there
like
any?
the 4.
You want me to start with the 4?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were different kind of themes to the strategic plan development, and one of them was risk mitigation. And the objectives that were identified, risk mitigation, I thought were excellent and very timely. If you look at the memo, and do you want me to pull up the memo on the screen? Or because I can do that real quick if you'd like. So I thought that the first three strategies under risk mitigation were timely and appropriate. So the first one was emergency response. And recently I've had input or discussions from Trustee Grabowski about concerns about safety on our public beach, especially after what happened in New Orleans over the New Year's holiday. So talking about being prepared for that kind of an event or installing infrastructure to prevent that kind of a thing seems very timely in terms of our plan. The second strategy is talked about our utilities, and certainly we know we've got a variety of issues already being faced by our water utility, and we're already engaged with the DNR in a series of improvement tasks that are on the horizon. So again, this appears to be very timely for the village, that this would be a focus for us. The third one is IT security. And while we don't have a particular issue identified or in motion in the village regarding IT security, it is certainly timely, and we read every day about public entities that are victims of attacks. And this is probably something that should become kind of an annual review, because the evolution of this kind of technology happens very, very quickly. Weaknesses are identified very quickly by the bad people, et cetera. So this is something that should probably have some sort of an annual review. And then finally, an objective or strategy that wasn't related to risk mitigation was to evaluate village-owned properties and assets. And in the 6 months that I've been here, I've been engaged in a number of conversations, some with board members, some with local business leaders, about how village-owned lands and assets could be improved to support business, to make the community more attractive for tourism and for residents, and for quality of life issues. So identify just some of the issues that have come up in these conversations, some sort of an improved experience at our beachfront. One of the examples that's been pointed out to me is the beachfront bump outs that Oconomowoc had installed along their lake with some residential seating and I don't know if you want to call it spectator seating, just not only in support of the local lakeside businesses, but also for the events that occur in our lakefront over the warmer months. Another topic that has come up for an improvement is some sort of a river walk to connect areas behind the businesses to that lakefront area. I've actually had some mention of private support from some of those businesses if the village were to pursue that, and I would love to be able to pursue that while the offer's there, while the idea is on the table, to kind of share that responsibility with the businesses, between the taxpayers and the businesses. And then, of course, the establishment of the quiet zone, which we know is in progress already. One item that I did not include in the memo, but has come up in some conversation, is not related to the beachfront per se, but potentially a Four Seasons building that would go in Kiwanis Park. And that's kind of a bigger, maybe longer term discussion than these other ones, which might be more short-term and accomplishable, or more progress could be made on them in the course of 2025. But if that is something that the board wants to explore, that could be part of this strategy. And then finally, of course, all of this stuff is kind of tied to money. So we got to be able to pay for it somehow. And one of my goals that the board established for me in 2025 is to come up with a financial plan for the village. So however these discussions unfold, I think it's an important or a key piece that plan be available for board review and dissection to see how this stuff fits in or doesn't fit in.
Are there any questions or comments, right, as it's Starting right now? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the risk mitigation information, there are a few things that in my mind, the list should include. One is just a general security risk having to do with areas where we don't have proper protection for certain things, the type of things we don't talk about in public. That's an area of concern for me. Also, the economic risk and understanding where that potential is in the future. And that's one of the things I think when we worked on Matt's objectives, one of the things we wanted to understand is how do things look 5 years into the future. We hear about Brookfield talking about having to go to referendum. You hear about other based off of their analysis that's looking 2 or 3 years down the line. Are we faced with a similar situation? And just getting our arms around that economic risk also and understanding that. The other thing I probably should mention too in regard to water quality, I think it's important for us to not only have what essentially is that 1 to 5 year look, but also when it comes to water in the future, what is the really big picture long term? We've seen what Waukesha is doing. You're starting to hear rumbles about other communities potentially having to do something similar. Is that something that should at least be not necessarily in our short-term focus, but in a long-term focus as a possibility too? And what cost ramifications are part of that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, Trustee Rhodey, because somehow that has to dovetail or blend with the timetable that is under development presently with the DNR about fixing the issues now. There needs to be some sort of a marriage or a connection between the two, the long term, so that we're not forced to invest short term and long term, right?
Any other comments at this time? Matt, how do you want us to proceed with this? Do you want to assign people as we go along, or?
Well, is there anything that you had in your mind as an important plan or important piece of the plan for the village that I didn't talk about with these 4 objectives? And certainly this is not cast in stone, right? I mean, this is supposed to be a living document, right? That as issues evolve and as circumstances change, we should be nimble enough that we can change our focus if that's what the situation calls for. So certainly this is not something we're committed to this regardless over the next 12 to 18 months.
Jeff?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I don't disagree that the ones you pulled out are vital. I do think there is some benefit to assigning or having somebody spearheading some of the other ones, which not saying that they jump in priority, but do deserve some attention. Even the simple ones such as like the communication piece, to look for various ways to get word out to the community. That didn't make the top 4, but I do think that's something that can be at least looked into over the year by someone on this board. So I have a feeling like there might be some of the other ones that, while they might not be a priority, someone might be willing to take some responsibility for, potentially. So I would not be opposed to at least doing a high level overview of the other ones that we identified when we built this out, just to see if there's any interest from the board.
I think that's fair.
Justin, did you want to say something?
I said I think that's fair. To just give everything a once over and make sure we're not missing anything that could be either an easy win or that we deemed a high priority before when we discussed.
All right. Well, if I look at the tracking spreadsheet, all I did was I put everything that was in the plan that was adopted into that spreadsheet, right? So that first one, Objective A, is development, and that the Village of Pewaukee should enact a planned, purposeful approach to development and redevelopment. And strategy 1 was to focus on the redevelopment of the downtown district, which includes lakefront business districts, Oakton Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue, and Main Street. And then there were, looks like 10 tactics that were identified for focusing on development or redevelopment in the downtown area.
So this is, oh, sorry, speak. I mean, this is one that obviously you captured a little bit in number 4, development strategy. So those are the important ones, or some of the important ones I feel out of this. This is a big ask, for one person to undertake. Like if it was to say, hey, I'd like to volunteer to take on Objective A. I mean, because a lot of the review, evaluate processes for the planners, work with the plan commission. Obviously, the Pursue Quiet Zone is more on your plate. Evaluate parking needs. I mean, that's a biggie. So I think there's elements of this that definitely need to be tackled. It is a highest priority to create a vision document. I mean, we have some sort of a vision that we got out of the capstone. How formal do we want to survey current property owners? I know Bob and I met with a couple property owners already. So, I mean, I'd be willing to take on this, some of this list if somebody else is willing to jump in there. But, I'm passionate about seeing our downtown succeed. But this is it's a pretty substantial list.
I would think that we need to have at least 2 people on each one, just because of the undertaking. I don't necessarily think that one person couldn't do it, but maybe 2 people on there might be better.
Absolutely.
But that would be completely up to the board to make that decision. You can't go any more than 2 because 3 would then become an issue. Yes, Bob.
Jim, I have the same passion for this one that you probably do. A lot of different areas, a lot of it. There's some other things that I think I'd like to include in this one.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's a
Yeah, but I would. This is also one that I would very much be excited to work on too.
I think you both are a very good fit for that. There are the 2 people I would suggest for that one, so.
How do you want to do this then? Just take each one, or does 1 through 10 would be?
Yeah,
Are you kind of talking about the whole strategy 1 itself, or
the whole objective?
I think what I would recommend, if we have 2 people willing to work on this objective, like the board has already noted, it's so meaty
yeah.
that maybe that should be a side discussion of how you want to break that up.
I guess it's just that there's only 2 parts to it. Okay. The second part of it is outside the B2 district. That's just village-owned properties. That's not that heavy of a lift, I don't think. So I have no problem with taking the full objective. Bob?
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, the one thing I would consider, though, as part of strategy too, when we're looking at village-owned properties, I do think that Four Seasons discussion in the park should be part of that also.
So basically taking the triangle.
Yeah, essentially looking at the downtown triangle. Okay. Because not only are we talking about some of the benefits that you'd get from the building, but there would also potential be some things that would add additional parking to the overall area that we could do over there.
So does that mean I'm out then, eh?
Sorry?
That means I'm out then. You and I have had that discussion quite a bit, so I understand.
All right, so that,
As president, you're always in. You could feel free to share your opinion, Jeff.
So, okay, Bob and Jim will take the first, are we looking at the first 10?
The objective A.
objective
Whole
A.
objective.
Okay,
Then objective B is that this is purposeful communication and outreach initiatives to inform and engage the community of activities, events, and public actions. So then there are 3 strategies that go along with that. Strategy 1 is to develop plans to enhance proactive ongoing communications with residents and businesses. Strategy 2 is to create a framework to enhance the relationship between the village, businesses, and community organizations. And strategy 3 is to develop and implement plans for ongoing communications and relationships with state and county officials, community resources.
is there anyone that would like to handle those 2?
So, so going back to what you initially said, Matt, about if we break everything up, then are we gonna be able to accomplish everything? So, just for clarity purposes, are we now going through the entire thing and assigning every single section, or are we looking right now for the key priorities to add to the initial list?
Do we want to, yeah, I agree. Do we want to table some and say, okay, let's see what the next one is?
Or like in 6
yeah, and I
months,
think-
like a strategy B or something, you know?
Yeah, and I think, Matt, identified the priorities, what he felt was the priorities. It sounded like everybody was pretty much in agreement with those priorities. So should we assign the priorities, okay? And the rest of it, once we have the other 2 people established, unless Kristen wants to do it in the next month and a half, but
I mean, I'm good, you guys, but
once we have a full board, the other 2 people come online, then we finish out. But I think the important thing is probably getting the priorities assigned.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's too much for us all to look at right now.
Yeah, I don't think this one bubbles to the top either as something we're going to accomplish in the next 2 months.
So maybe like the first objective, since that one, obviously everyone has felt strongly about that since the beginning, we added that on to the list, and perhaps we can still review and see if there's anything else that's crucial after we identify those, assign those 4.
And yeah, and I mean, I agree, because I think that objective A anyway pretty much wipes out number 4.
Number 4, except for the quiet zone, which I think you've already identified
Right,
as
it's
yours.
already
your
in process.
And
side.
I mean, I was going to say the number 1, the risk mitigation, I would say that the risks of downtown would fall into that objective A, unless we're looking at all of the village for potential risks, opposed to just, the beachfront.
I would say that would be a broader than the beachfront, if someone's gonna take it on as a main priority, personally.
Which ones would you, okay, we've identified, or Matt has identified 4 that he felt were
Yeah.
most important.
The number 1 is risk mitigation, emergency response preparation.
As village president, I'm supposed to be in charge of the emergency system, or supposed to be involved in that.
Like
So I
turning
will
the bat signal
definitely be
on.
on that.
Well, no, that would be communication. We don't have that.
I would be happy to work with you on that.
Okay, so we have 2 people on that, so we'll work on that particular one. Do we want to go any further, or how much, where else do we want to go? Next one, Matt?
Well, so that's Kristen and Jeff
Yeah.
for the 3 risk mitigation
Right,
objectives,
right.
or strategies, I should say.
I mean, water quality is kind of already being spearheaded by DPW and the DNR. But as Bob mentioned about bigger risk picture and forecasting.
Didn't you, in that first one, it was also emergency plan,
Yep.
so that's part of it too, right?
Right.
So maybe yeah, if we look at that as being a strategy, perhaps we combine them kind of like we did for Jim and Bob, that it's just an overall risk management strategy, and then those can be kind of the top few things to start with.
Sounds good to me.
So it's a kind of objective C, with the addition of kind of the risk of soft targets and such being added. This is about emergency response plan with village staff, key stakeholders, village staff and key stakeholders annual review of the response plan. And then what other risks have been added? Objective C, strategy 1 then. Oh, and
And
3.
Yeah, so,
And basically 2 as well, because that's related to the water quality, isn't it?
I guess, and kind of 4 also, because that's downtown beach and parks.
Okay, so so we've kind of got objective A and objective C covered then, is that fair?
yeah, and I think that's a really good start for 2025, to be honest.
Kelly, we left you
We
on.
gotta get Kelly something.
I can't do anything for the next few months, so if we're looking more short term right now, I'm fine taking a back seat until after April 15th.
Okay, all right.
I won't be, I
didn't
can't
want you to feel
commit,
left out.
no, I can't commit a whole lot of time right now, so
Sounds
I'm
like
just
you guys
being,
are gonna revisit
I'm just
all
being
this anyway.
blatantly honest
Yeah.
on that.
And don't forget the people that
There's 3 people that
fire
will
and, or file an exemption too, or a delay. You might be past the 15th.
Oh,
I do want to mention in some of the ones that the objective that Jim and I are working on, the portions that do include parks, Kristen, that you would be part of those conversations, not necessarily, we wouldn't have a separate
Yeah.
3-person group, but we would, at one point, one of us will update you and make sure you're in sync with all those too,
I
since you're a liaison with the Park and Rec Board.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm happy to jump in at any time if it becomes more that direction as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that we should be looking at then? Are we okay with the 2 items we have already put together and then waiting till after the election? Move forward with,
Yeah, it only makes sense opposed to trying to all bite at the apple and then have 2 new people come on.
okay.
Can I ask another question? And Matt, as far as updating the forms, how would you prefer to do that? So as Jim and I or Kristen and Jeff get their portions or have updates, how do you prefer that to be done?
You could just send it to me in an email, that'd be fine.
Okay.
And if
Is it
necessary, we
comparable?
could meet with you too, right?
Sure, right. I mean, historically, is that what you've done?
Yeah, not personal opinion, wasn't that affected. Anytime we ask people to put things into forms, you know, it's one of those things that I personally would prefer to sit down with you.
Oh,
Okay,
all right.
talk to you about them. But that's a personal thing. I
I'm
just,
probably the opposite,
you know, anytime that is similar to what my old job used to be, I don't like doing it anymore. So,
I believe,
PTSD, Bob?
I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but when Craig was on, weren't we sending the information to Craig?
No, we were updating the spreadsheet ourselves.
yeah,
We were?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, when Heather shared the spreadsheet with me, it appeared to be from a shared resource, like, you know, from like SharePoint or something like that, where you could have multiple people accessing at one point. And if that's what you'd like to do, I mean, that's,
That is not what Bob would like to do.
yeah. Right.
We'll stay with Bob's choice.
Do you have a problem with that? My efficiency brain has, like, I don't like that step, but I'm open to either way. But it's more of an inefficiency for you versus us.
Right, so I like being the gatekeeper of the document
Okay, okay, great.
and like being in the loop as to what's going on. So just funneling that through me is fine. And whether we talk about it or I get an email, that doesn't, you know,
And if
I'm happy about that either way.
if at any time, Matt, you feel that things are starting to get overwhelming, then we can revisit this and we'll appoint 2 trustees to help you out.
Right, and
Provided then,
I'll openly tell you, I'm not used to trustees doing work like this. This is kind of staff work. So it'll be a learning curve for me as well, but we'll figure it out.
okay.
So I guess the remaining question is, as we have,
What part are you referring to with that statement?
so I'm envisioning that trustees will be researching things and learning things on their own, and then updating me with the progress of the things that they've learned regarding development of a Four Seasons building or whatever topic you're working on. And normally, staff would be doing that and just kind of bringing back the results to the board. That's kind of my experience. So it'll be a little new for me to have board members doing that independently of staff. But all of the issues will move much faster if that's what we do.
Okay.
Is that historically how we've always done it?
I think we've done,
Well, this is only recent history,
Yeah.
the strategic plan.
yeah,
Strategic planning.
but because Craig was on the board, he kind of spearheaded it quite a bit too. I think he put all the facts and figures together after they went through Scott or however.
When a lot of his work was informed by the surveys that we've conducted,
Right.
Right.
residents and businesses.
Matt, do you have a timeline as far as when would be the next update you want to put together?
Well, that's right where we, that's right where we are in the discussion, is what is our expectation as a body as to how frequently you want to hear about it. I mean, I think that I should have an updated spreadsheet for you probably at the next meeting, just so that we're all kind of starting off on the same page. But in terms of when progress happens on this, it typically is in fits and starts, is when people can make time for it in their schedule. So my recommendation would be for it to be quarterly and see if that is sufficient for the board.
That's the historic.
So probably in May.
For the next update?
Yeah. That'll give time for the new members to kind of get some information from here, and I know you said you were gonna meet with them. So this might be something that you can kind of give them a touch and go on it, see how they feel.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? So we got everything pretty well situated here then, Matt?
I think we have a good starting point.
Okay, then I'm going to go to the next one, which is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Pass it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. The special meeting is hereby adjourned. Okay, then we're gonna go